My dad stole my identity and opened 3 credit cards in my name. He told me since I'm young, I can do without for a few years. I'm trying to buy a house and I'm freaking out. I found my dad used my information to open 3 credit cards over the last year. When I went to get a pre-approval for a mortgage, I was told by the lender they wouldn't be able to give me a home loan because of the defaulted credit cards. They also said I probably wouldn't be able to get a loan from any lender because of it and gave me a sheet of paper explaining what I need to do in order to fix it. When I tried disputing the cards, one of which is already in collections, the disputes got closed out as debts were verified. I told my divorced parents about it and their answers were pretty wildly different. My dad said these things happen and that I should be more careful in the future with my social security number. Seeing as I've always been careful, that made me pretty mad. My mom says she thinks my dad might have something to do with it since him opening credit cards in her name had a part to play in their divorce. She told me he ran up about $50,000 in credit card debt on secret credit cards. A few days ago, I ended up casually telling my dad that I'm going to have to file a police report for the credit cards. He told me I probably shouldn't do that because $15,000 isn't that much in the grand scheme of things. When I told him it was keeping me from buying a house, he said I could just wait a few years until they fell off my credit report. He said it would only take another 4.5 years. When I told him I obviously couldn't wait that long, so I will have to file the police report, he straight up told me not to do it and just told me to be careful in the future. Once I told him I already got the paperwork together from the credit agencies, he told me he had opened the cards to pay for living expenses over the last year. He said his work slowed down a bit, but he'd do what he could to help pay it off. He said it would ruin his life if he went to jail. I'm leaning towards going to the police anyway, but I didn't right that minute. I have everything in front of me today to go make the report. I guess I just want to make sure turning it over to the police is the right thing to do, especially if I'm wanting to buy a house this year. Update. I went to the police. The process itself was pretty easy. I went to the police department and the person at the front desk had me wait about 10 minutes before an officer came out. We talked for about 15 minutes and he made copies of all the paperwork I gave him. He told me that the case would be assigned to a detective and gave me a pamphlet they have about how to contact the credit agencies. I was given a report number and was told I could use that now to start disputing the accounts. A detective is going to follow up with me in the next couple of weeks. I asked what would end up happening to my dad, and the officer said it looked pretty clear-cut to him, but the charging decision is 100% with the state attorney's office. He said if they decide to pursue charges, he'll likely get a warrant put out for his arrest. He also said typically if this is his first felony, he's probably going to get some sort of pre-trial diversion with court supervision or probation. He probably won't go to jail for years, but if he gets picked up on a warrant, he's going to spend at least a little bit of time behind bars. I've decided I'm okay with that because it's obvious to me he did this purposefully. He's never been arrested before, so hopefully this is a wake-up call for him. At the same time, he completely did this to himself.
This is why I don't believe your man should have a girl best friend. And I'm not saying you shouldn't have friends of the opposite gender. I'm saying like be super close with them. Like that bitch knows everything about you. And before y'all come at me, let me just explain. There's a study that went on that showed how men's and women's brains reacted to people who they are not attracted to. In this study, they found out when men talk to women they are not attracted to, the part where their brain is like annoyed and irritated lit up. Okay, so if your man has a girl best friend that he gets along with really well and is super close with, chances are he's probably attracted to her. Let's just get into the story time because honestly, this happened to me way too many times where I thought a guy was like actually my friend, but he in reality just wanted to get into these cheeks. Like this happened in high school before I met my fiance. So basically picture a baddie junior year of high school. The worst part is that he literally had a girlfriend. Not even gonna lie, he tried to get at me like before he even got a girlfriend and I always like friend zoned him. He always talked about how he looks at me like a sister. That's why I continued being friends with him because like, okay, you see me as a sister, so we're friends. Okay, period. Basically, he got a girlfriend, but she went to a different school. So I never met her. I never seen her. I only heard about her like through him. Basically, one day, I guess she was going through his phone or some shit and she seen a photo of me and him. Just want to clarify, he was the one who wanted to take the photo with me, okay? She could literally see who was holding up the phone, okay? You know what I mean. And let's just say she got really mad about that one. But I didn't want to take a photo with your dusty ass man. That wasn't my fault. She found out my Instagram and she started to say, get away from my man. Why are you trying to steal my man? Meanwhile, I do not want this dusty ass man. Please, please, please. The bad bitch that I am, I told her like, hey, like we're just friends. You can talk to him about it, but I'll stay away from him, okay? That's what you want me to do, I will do it. Because again, I don't give a fuck to stay friends with this man. I really don't care. Like, so I basically distanced myself from him, but he kept on trying to talk to me in school. He kept on trying to like eat lunch with me in school. I told this man, I was like, hey, like your girl, she does not want us to be friends. I totally get it. I respect it. Like, I don't want any problems. I don't want no drama, especially not over a man I don't even fucking like. Like, I told him this, right? He's like, oh, don't worry about her. I already talked to her. You don't have to worry. Like, she understands. She knows that we're friends. I was like, okay. While we were eating lunch, he was talking about how crazy his girl is, how he's gonna break up with her. Funny part is, someone took a photo of us eating lunch together and they sent it to that girl because apparently she has a friend that goes to our school. And guess who got another aggressive DM? Like, babes, don't come at me if your man is literally lying to me, telling me that you're okay with it. I told her that. I was like, your man literally told me that you were okay with it. And she started getting mad at me like, oh, but I told you I don't want you talking to him. Okay, but girl, like your man was lying to me. I also told her that he was talking shit about her because he was saying how he wanted to break up with her. Please tell me why as soon as I text her that, it's like my boy best friend or her man literally hit me up and was like, why would you tell her that? Like, I thought you were my friend. Why the fuck did you put me in this situation? I thought you were my friend. What the fuck? Okay, I really don't care about this man at all, and I hated the fact that he put me in this situation, so I just blocked both of them. Like, good written. I don't even want to be friends with him no more. I really don't care to be friends with him no more. And honestly, it just showed me how slimy he really is as a fucking person. And they're still together to this day. Like, they have a kid, even though he cheated on her twice. Like, this isn't literally the only story that I have of my boy best friends trying to get with me.
I think my husband fathered his best friend's children, and now one of them is attracted to my daughter. All names are fake. This began as dark, intrusive thought that I could never shake off, and over the years it has bloomed into a poison flower that infects my entire psyche. I'm a 42-year-old woman. My husband Luke is 43, and so is Amy. I met Luke in college, but he's known Amy since they were about 7. They did everything together and understood each other implicitly. They were best friends. They've always insisted that they are surrogate siblings to each other. Naturally, I, as a new girlfriend, felt a little threatened by Amy and her closeness to Luke, but they both reassured me I had nothing to worry about, that their bond was not romantic and had never been sexual, that Amy really was just the sister that Luke never had. I believed them, and it didn't take long for me to forget any and all insecurity I had about Amy. She became my friend too. She officiated our wedding. Luke and I have built a wonderful life together, and we have always had a strong relationship. After we got married and moved in together, we still saw a lot of Amy, and I was fine with that. I had passed many a night on the town trying to help Amy find a man, as she always lamented how she is unlucky in love. Luke and I started to have children after we were married, and at around the same point, so did Amy. For further context, my children are Sophie, 15, Owen, 12, Louise, 10, and Carter, 6. Amy's children are Tom, 17, Kaylee, 14, and twins, Adam and Jenna, 9. Now, Amy was not in a relationship at this point. She was not married. As far as I knew, she was dating, but not consistently. As Luke and I had more kids in our family group, periodically Amy would find herself pregnant as well. It happened a few times, and Luke and I never knew anything about the fathers in question. I kind of assumed that maybe Amy was sleeping around and not keeping in contact with her one-night stands. Luke agreed this was probably the answer. While I did ask each time if Amy knew the paternity, she always said no, and didn't seem that worried about the idea of raising kids on her own, so I didn't pester her. Of course, she had us to support her, so there was that. While Amy never asked for any help, of course Luke was never going to let his best friend struggle to stay afloat when she had children to raise. Financially, we are very fortunate and privileged. I have a job that pays handsomely, and Luke also had wealthy parents who already knew and loved Amy, so they were happy to provide for her. My in-laws defy all stereotypes. They are the kindest and gentlest people, so we were able to support Amy. To get her somewhere to stay with her kids, people might be tempted to call her a leech, but I never saw it that way. None of us did. She needed help, and we could provide it. I also know people are going to criticize her for her lack of responsibility and question why she never used more reliable birth control. Honestly, that is a long story that I don't even want to get into because even I don't fully understand her reasoning, but it was quite important to her that she never be on birth control and that whatever came of that choice she would accept. It wasn't religiously motivated, I know that, but it was that degree of significance to Amy. She really did not want to take birth control. She's explained it to me more than once, but I'm still not clear on why. Of course, Amy being Luke's best friend since they were kids, it's not unreasonable that sometimes they hang out together while I'm not there. Hey, that's fine. Sometimes I hang out with Amy one-on-one as well, though Luke does it more. She was his friend first. This included him going over to where she was staying at times, sleeping over there. Was I a fool to trust him and believe nothing was going on? Perhaps. But for years they presented as being buddies, like siblings. I didn't pick up on any vibes between them. Not ever. As one can expect, our children were brought up together. Not in the same house. Our home is decently sized, but even we don't have the room for 8 kids. But we made sure Amy's children met ours from a young age, and they always got along and had strong bonds of friendship that have formed over the years, which is good, especially if I'm right and they share blood. I've been dawdling, getting to the main point. Yes, I have come to suspect that Luke fathered at least one of Amy's kids, if not all of them. Frankly, I do suspect they are all his. I would never have believed my husband to be capable of such a thing, and he's given me no indication that he is the unfaithful sort. But he does spend a lot of time with Amy, and I have to confess I cannot remember seeing her with any real boyfriend over the years. She would talk to men at bars and parties. I would try to be her wingman, and so on. But nothing ever seemed to really happen. So when she got pregnant the first time, I was curious. When it happened again and again, I began to wonder if she had some sort of secret fella who she didn't want us to know about for whatever reason. But I couldn't think of any reason why she would hide him, especially from her children. After Carter, our youngest, was born, Luke and I agreed that the time had come for him to have a vasectomy. Amy's twins had come just a couple of years prior. Of course, after the procedure, Luke and I continued to make love, but I no longer had to think about pregnancy. Meanwhile, Amy never got pregnant again after the twins. Is it a coincidence that Luke had a vasectomy and then both of us stopped getting pregnant? I don't know, but Luke would still visit her, and he wasn't just going to see her, but checking up on her children as well. In general, I should have paid more attention to it sooner, but Luke has always acted like a father to them, especially as they've gotten older. He's the father they never had. He doesn't neglect me or our children one bit. He's doing double duty on its own. The idea that he is a surrogate father to Amy's fatherless children isn't inherently suspicious. One could call it noble, but it combines with a lot of other little things. There is appearance as well. I won't go into specifics of hair color, eye color, or unique physical traits because I'd rather limit the identifying factors of the people involved and keep this whole thing as vague as possible. But suffice it to say, Amy's children, they certainly look like they could be Luke. Kaylee has a very unusual allergy that Luke also has. The twins look very much like him, Adam in particular. The older Tom has gotten, the more of Luke I can see in his face and personality. While their race doesn't matter, the reality is that Luke is a different race than Amy, and Amy's children look pretty biracial. I could easily believe their father is the same race as Luke. Doesn't mean Luke has to be the father, but it sure seems like it. I have never voiced my anxieties to either Amy or Luke. I don't want to be the bad guy and guilty or innocent. I already know they would flatly deny my accusations and be hurt by them. Imagine if that drama reached the ears of my kids or Amy's kids. Either way, Luke continues to spend time with Amy and her children, just as her children spend time with mine. I have hinted to Luke that I feel needy for more attention and wish he wouldn't give as much to Amy, but he either missed my cues or pretended that he missed them. I don't want to push this idea that he's favoring her because it's not even really true. He's never neglected me for her. I just can't shake the feeling that Luke and Amy have been intimate before, likely numerous times. So as far as I know, Amy never really wanted to be a mother either. She wasn't opposed to it, and when each of her children came into the world, she instantly fell in love with them. But motherhood was never really a major part of her life plan or identity. In the grand scheme of things, when we would talk about the future, she would sometimes mention a husband and children, but it never seemed like something she had her heart particularly set on. Like, I don't think this is a case of Luke just giving Amy children. I doubt that was the motive for the infidelity. That would have been a side effect. I've been letting this go and turning a blind eye for years. It was a dark thought in the back of my mind after Kaylee's allergy was discovered, but I dismissed it. Got worse after the twins were born. I dismissed it. Then, when Amy stopped having babies, I wanted to feel reassured by that. But Luke had gotten a vasectomy, so if anything, that made my anxiety worse. There have been nights that I wished the twins were younger, that they had come along after Luke's procedure. It's been twisting me into knots for a long time, but I don't want to be the one who rips our family apart, especially since technically I could be wrong. Except now I'm very afraid, because in the last few months we've had a new development in our kids' social circle. Tom, Amy's eldest, asked Sophie out. Sophie is my eldest. She's really blossomed over the last few years and become quite the outspoken beauty, so I'm not shocked to see she's getting male attention, but Tom asking her out had me thrown. Sophie said no, but only because I'm quite protective when it comes to her exploring dating, and she knew she'd have to ask me first. first. I could tell she was flattered and intrigued by his interest and wanted to say yes. She approached me to talk about it. Bless my girl, she did everything right. I think she expected I would see things her way and agree that she could date Tom. Much to her surprise, I very firmly said no. That caused a bit of conflict. She didn't even want to date him that badly. She just couldn't understand why she wasn't allowed to. And I couldn't explain it to her. All I could come up with was, he's too old for you. Which he is, but it's really not about that. When Amy and Luke heard, I was so very curious to see what their reactions would be. If either of them had agreed with Sophie and tried to convince me that the two of them should be allowed to date, I think I would have been relieved and taken that as proof that I was wrong about something going on between them. Wrong about who fathered Amy's children. But the ambiguity continued. They took my side. Both of them put their foot down, though not as fiercely as I did. Luke agreed with me, and he also worried that trying to forbid such a romance would only make Sophie want it more. He's probably right about that. Amy seemed more apathetic to the idea. She didn't want Tom to date Sophie either, and she backed me up, but I don't know. She just wasn't taking it as seriously. She seemed to think it was a fleeting crush. Well, it wasn't. In the months following those conversations, Tom would spend more and more time with Sophie. They would be alone or with other friends anytime they possibly could. It's become abundantly clear that Tom is crazy about Sophie and wants to be with her, and he definitely wants to be physical. I've been watching them like a hawk and noticed his eye wandering many times. And while I'm doing everything I can to kill this budding romance in the crib, I also am feeling somewhat powerless. Sophie hasn't outwardly defied me. She's just hanging out with Tom as friends, so forcing them to stop spending time together would be unreasonable and probably encourage more sneaking around. But I'm so afraid that they're already doing that. My nightmare is that they're secretly dating and doing God knows what when no one is looking. I've observed Tom being rather handsy with Sophie, and she presents no objection whatsoever. And I just don't know what to say. I had considered trying to convince Sophie that Tom is like her brother, but if she doesn't see him that way, I don't really have the power to rewrite their emotional dynamic or the history of their friendship. I always saw Amy and her children as being like family, but my kids might see Amy's kids more as best friends. The problem is, of course, that if my husband has indeed been carrying on an affair over the years and I'm right about the paternity of Amy's children, then Tom and Sophie cannot be anything more than friends under any circumstances. End of discussion. It can never happen. I feel powerless to stop it, though. Luke has apparently talked to Tom about this, as has Amy, but he is unrelenting and won't give up on Sophie. I think she enjoys that attention and devotion. Tom has also confronted me and asked why I'm so against this when I know him very well and I know he would be good to Sophie. I didn't know what to say other than to fall back on her being too young for him. But that won't work forever. If God forbid they're still attracted to each other in a few years, then they'll pursue this with abandon, and once they're legal adults, there's nothing I can do about it. Amy and Luke agreed with me that Tom cannot date Sophie, but that's all they've really done. They feel just as powerless as me to prevent teen love. It genuinely feels sometimes like they've given up and will bury their heads in the sand about this. Just do nothing and hope the feelings pass as Tom and Sophie get older. Which, yeah, they're in high school. It's unlikely Tom will be in love with Sophie forever. But my fear is that she'll let him do something intimate with her before that time comes. Something neither of them can take back. I am this close to opening a door I cannot close. This close to screaming at Luke that all this wouldn't be happening if he hadn't cheated on me these many years. If he hadn't been all but raising a second family with his surrogate sister behind my back. Now, Luke's son wants to F our daughter, his actual sister, because as far as he knows, she's just his childhood friend. And it's all Luke and Amy's fault for what they've done. If I speak up, everything gets blown to hell. On the off chance that I am wrong, I'm a horrible monster who accused the love of my life and one of my closest friends of doing something horrible. If I'm right, it still tears our entire structure apart. The family and social unit we've become over the last several years is gone, and everyone will be stressed and upset, even if Luke and I don't divorce. If I do nothing, Sophie's eventually going to sleep with Tom and be his girlfriend, and I'm low-key terrified it will happen sooner rather than later, or worse, that it's already happening under my nose. I hope to hell this relationship fades as they mature, but what if it doesn't? What if they wind up being together for years? What if they marry and want to get pregnant someday? And if I tell Sophie the truth about Amy's kids, then everyone else finds out too, and that's going to ruin so many lives. It would shatter my kids' perception of their father and their Aunt Amy. Luke is Owen's hero. I don't even want to think about how much this would hurt him. And what about Amy's children? They are innocent. They didn't ask for this. They don't control where they came from, and I don't want to hurt them. Admittedly, I'm not happy with Tom at the moment. A week ago, I saw him put his hand on Sophie's butt, and I wanted to knock his teeth out. But even he doesn't deserve to be burdened by the knowledge that it's is his half-sister he's been fantasizing about. It's all so effed up, and I don't know what to do. I've been looking the other way and letting my husband and his best friend insult me for such a long time now. I thought I could live with it, but this business with Tom and Sophie has me distressed.
I've been boy sober for 24 years. I never had a boyfriend, haven't had my first kiss, and these are the most annoying things people tell me. If I hear more time, I'm literally gonna lose my mind. I've said this before and I'll say it again. I just feel like I have to keep saying this because people still say this to me. It'll happen when you least expect it or when you're not looking. And I'm like, I cannot tell you guys how many times people say this to me. Like, that is the number one thing I think that people tell me the most. I'm never expecting it and still nothing. And there's a difference between expecting it and just, like, wanting it. You know what I mean? This one is getting so old. I'm like, please, like, just come up with something new. Okay, the next thing, which I feel like kind of goes along with the one where it's like, you know, it'll happen when you least expect it. It's when people say it'll happen when you don't want it anymore. This one doesn't make sense to me because I'm never not gonna want that. Like, what do you mean? Like, if I have to wait to find the love of my life at a time when I don't want it, I'll be single for the rest of my life because there's not gonna be any time where I don't want to be in love. I swear, do people hear the things that come out of their mouths when they say these things? Like, it makes no sense. I remember there's a time where, like, people kept telling me this, and I started to try to, like, think that way and be like, okay, like, Gabby, you don't want this. Like, you know, I'm fine. Like, I like being single, which I do. Yeah, I don't want a boyfriend. I don't want to be in love. But, like, I don't want to have to, like, convince myself of that because that's, like, just, like, not true. Like, sure, maybe for some people they found love, like, when they kind of didn't want it, or maybe they just got out of a relationship and they weren't ready. And another thing, like, they weren't expecting it, but it did happen. And I just feel like that's luck. They're in the right place at the right time, meeting the right people, like, lucky. Other thing so many people tell me is, don't worry about it. Like, you're fine. Like, don't be sad. Thank you. Actually, now that you said that, I will stop worrying about it and I won't be sad about it. I don't know how to not worry about it because it is something I want. And I know some people say just, like, trust in, like, just happening for you. But what if it doesn't? If I'm just, like, one of those people who not meant to experience, oh my god, that I think everyone deserves to experience love. How do I not worry about that? Okay, my next thing is when somebody says, you're young, you have so much time, girl. It's like, I know that. I know I'm only 24, and that is very young. I've already missed out on having, like, you know, young love. I had, like, no experiences dating or anything in high school. That already makes me so sad because I can never get that back. Like, I'll never get to have experienced young love. Young, like, as in, yeah, like, high school. You know what I mean? I really would love to experience love in my 20s. Like, my 20s are such, like, a fun time, and it's really sad. And I know, like, have, like, my whole entire life to experience love, and you can experience love at any age, and it's still just as beautiful. And everyone around you and every one of your friends is, like, in a relationship or has had relationships in high school. Around this age, too, people are getting married, having kids, and I'm just so behind, I feel like. The prophecy playing. Don't want money, just someone who wants my company. You know? Let it once be me. Like, are y'all hearing her? Like, this song is literally me. Another one is let go of your expectations, or kind of like, somebody has literally said to me once, like, don't be a hopeless romantic. Or, like, give up the expectation of, like, you know, how you're gonna meet them, what they're gonna be like. Honestly, I hate that. I am such a hopeless romantic, and I don't want to change that about me, because I do think that love can be how it is in movies and books, like, to an extent. A man written by a woman. So many people I know have told me that they are dating somebody who's, like, written by a woman, and they're a hopeless romantic too. And I don't honestly have, like, any set expectation of, like, how I'm gonna meet somebody. I do have expectations and, like, standards, and, like, it kind of goes along with the same thing of, like, people telling you, like, not to be picky. So when somebody said that to me, my, like, jaw literally dropped. I was like, okay. It actually broke my heart, because I'm like, I don't want to do that. I don't want to give up the hopeless romantic part of me. Okay, side note, this blush combo is absolutely stunning. Hello? This is the song I play when somebody tells me that. I'm there most of the year, I hate it. Another one, a lot of people tell me to just enjoy my single time and enjoy being single. That's what I've been doing for 24 years. I do enjoy being single. I love being single, but there's still moments where I want to be in a relationship, and I'm at that point where I want to be in love. I'm having so much fun being single. I love being alone. I love reading my books. I love going out with my girlfriends, like dancing, getting drinkies. Like, it's such a fun time. I seriously do love it so much. All right, lastly is one I've been getting ever since I started, like, posting about it, and it's stop posting about it and go out there and, like, do something about it. Which, first of all, believe it or not, I actually do leave my house a lot. I'm never gonna stop posting about it because this is such a universal experience that I did not know so many people were going through this, but so many people relate to my videos, and that makes me feel so much better and so less alone. It is truly so hard to find love. We're all trying our best. We all could take the tips that people tell us, and we probably still would be struggling because it's
My parents always favored my sister, so when Grandpa's will left me a $500,000 inheritance, they tried to steal it and give it to my sister. But little did they know that my grandparents had other plans. I, 28M, come from a family with a long and complicated history of favoritism. My parents, especially my dad, have always favored my younger sister Amy, 25F, over me. This favoritism started when we were kids and only got worse as we grew up. From my earliest memories, Amy was always the golden child. When I was 5 and she was 2, our parents threw her an extravagant birthday party with a bouncy castle, a petting zoo, and professional face painters. For my birthday that same year, I got a small family dinner and a store-bought cake. This set the tone for years to come. As we grew older, the disparities became more apparent. Amy always got the newest toys, the best clothes, and the most attention. I remember when I was 10, I saved up my allowance for months to buy a new bike. When Amy saw it, she threw a tantrum because she wanted one too. Instead of teaching her about saving or waiting, my parents immediately went out and bought her an even better bike than mine. School was another arena where the favoritism shone through. My parents went to all of Amy's school events but often missed mine. In 4th grade, I had the lead role in the school play. I was so excited and practiced for weeks. On the night of the performance, my parents showed up an hour late, missing my big scene. They said Amy had a tummy ache and they were comforting her. I later found out she was fine, they had just lost track of time while playing with her. When it came to academics, nothing I did ever seemed good enough. In middle school, I consistently got straight A's, joined the math club, and even won a regional science fair. My parents barely acknowledged these achievements, but when Amy got a B+ on a single test in her weakest subject, they threw her a celebratory dinner and bought her a new phone as motivation to keep improving. High school was particularly tough. I threw myself into every activity I could, hoping to win their approval. I was captain of the debate team, editor of the school newspaper, and maintained a 4.0 GPA. Meanwhile, Amy coasted through school, barely maintaining a C average and spending most of her time partying with friends. During my junior year, I was selected as one of 2 students from our school to attend a prestigious summer program at Harvard. It was a huge honor, and I was thrilled. When I shared the news at dinner, my dad grunted and changed the subject to Amy's upcoming dance recital. My mom at least said, "That's nice," but quickly moved on. The night of Amy's recital, which fell on the same day I was leaving for Harvard, my parents couldn't drive me to the airport because they didn't want to miss Amy's performance. I had to ask a friend's parents for a ride. The college application process was another painful experience. I spent months perfecting my essays, participating in extracurriculars, and studying for the SATs. I was accepted into several top-tier universities and received a substantial scholarship to my dream school. When I announced this at dinner, my parents' response was lukewarm at best. My dad said, "That's good, but don't let it go to your head. College isn't everything." My mom added, "Just don't forget about us when you're off becoming a big shot." In contrast, when Amy barely graduated high school and decided not to go to college, my parents were completely supportive. They praised her for knowing herself and not conforming to societal pressures. They even bought her a car as a graduation present, something they never did for me. This constant favoritism took a heavy toll on me emotionally. I struggled with depression and anxiety throughout my teens and early 20s. I started seeing a therapist in college, which helped me understand that my parents' behavior wasn't my fault. It took years of work to build my self-esteem and learn to validate myself instead of seeking approval from my parents. Despite the lack of support from my immediate family, I managed to build a good life for myself. I graduated college with honors, secured a good job in finance, and even bought my own house by 27. I'm proud of what I've achieved, even if my parents aren't. Now here's where the current drama starts. My grandfather on my dad's side passed away recently. He was a successful businessman who built a fortune from scratch, and he left behind a significant estate. In his will, he divided his assets equally among his children, my dad and his siblings, and grandchildren, me, Amy, and our cousins. My share of the inheritance was substantial, about $500,000. It would have allowed me to pay off my student loans, invest in my future, and maybe even start my own business someday. I was grateful for this unexpected windfall and the opportunities it could provide. However, when the will was read, my parents were visibly upset. They pulled me aside afterward and told me they thought it was unfair that I got an equal share. They said Amy needed the money more because she was struggling. She works part-time at a coffee shop and lives in our parents' basement. I was shocked but tried to stay calm. I explained that this was Grandpa's decision and it wasn't up to them to change it. They insisted that I should do the right thing and give my share to Amy. When I refused, they got angry and started guilt-tripping me, saying I was selfish and ungrateful. My dad brought up every instance he could think of where they had supported me, including paying for my braces, which were medically necessary, buying me school supplies, the bare minimum, and letting me live at home during college, even though I worked part-time to contribute to expenses. He conveniently forgot about the car they bought Amy, the countless shopping sprees, and the fact that they're still supporting her at 25. The situation escalated quickly. My dad, as the executor of the will, decided to take matters into his own hands. He announced that he was going to reinterpret Grandpa's wishes and give my entire share to Amy on top of her own inheritance. He claimed this is what Grandpa would have wanted if he had known our individual circumstances. I was devastated. Not only was this clearly illegal, but it was also a painful reminder of how little my parents valued me. I tried to reason with them, pointing out that Grandpa had always treated all his grandchildren equally and that he was well aware of our situations. My mom then accused me of speaking ill of the dead by suggesting Grandpa would have wanted anything different from what my dad was proposing. I brought up specific memories of Grandpa encouraging my academic and career pursuits, but my parents dismissed these as misunderstandings. They claimed Grandpa had privately expressed concern about Amy's future and had wanted to ensure she was taken care of. When I asked why he hadn't just written the will that way, they didn't have an answer. Amy, for her part, seemed uncomfortable with the situation but didn't speak up against our parents. When I tried to talk to her privately, she just shrugged and said, "Mom and Dad know best." It was clear she wasn't going to be any help. Feeling hurt and betrayed, I reached out to my paternal grandmother, Grandpa's widow, for advice. She was furious when she heard what was happening. She told me that this was absolutely not what Grandpa had intended and that my parents had no right to change the will. Grandma shared some information that shed new light on the situation. Apparently, my parents had approached Grandpa a few years ago asking him to leave everything to Amy in his will. Grandpa had firmly refused, stating that he believed in treating all his grandchildren equally. He had even added a clause to his will stating that anyone who contested the equal distribution would forfeit their share. Armed with this information, I confronted my parents. They were shocked that Grandma had told me about their previous attempt to influence the will. My dad tried to justify it by saying they were just looking out for Amy's future, but I could see the guilt on their faces. Grandma took action immediately. She contacted her lawyer and the other executors of the will. She also reached out to my dad's siblings, who were equally outraged by what my dad was trying to do. Together, they put a stop to my dad's plan and ensured that the will would be executed as written. My parents were forced to back down, but they were furious with me. They accused me of turning the family against them and said I should have handled this in-house instead of involving others. Now you can check for a part 2 by pressing share and more.